Hello and welcome to the very first Series Synopsis. Today I'm going to be going over the Shin Megami Tensei or Megaten series, and I'm mainly doing it for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with the series or for people who played some of the games but aren't quite sure about all of them in the series. This is the basic gist of it. I'm not going to go in depth on most of these, especially not the newer games like the Persona series and Nocturne, because I plan on saving it for later reviews, so you don't need to really worry about spoilers. The Megaten or Megami Tensei game story started out with Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei 1 and 2 back in 1987. These games were actually inspired by a series of short novels, Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei. There were actually 3 novels on that, which the games were based off of, and they pretty much laid the patchwork out for all the following Megaten games. The name Megami Tensei literally means Goddess Reincarnation, as the female heroine turns out to be the reincarnation of the Japanese god Izanami. While Izanami herself doesn't do much in this game, she and her reincarnations do show up in nearly every other game bearing the Megaten title. It's kind of a head tilt to the original names. The Megaten series is very demon-centric, as the first game in the series had Lucifer as the main antagonist, with Loki, who's the trickster god of Asgardian lore, and Set, a deity from Egyptian mythology, as more of side antagonists. Megami Tensei 2 didn't really add anything gameplay-wise, but it continued the story. I can't really say much for the actual gameplay of these two because they were never localized, but there's an English patch being worked on. Anyways, the first 2 Shin Megami Tensei games are really what got the series going. These were really unique for their time, because they were actually first-person RPGs. The game would show you your surroundings, and you just walk around until you'd see a person or get ambushed by an enemy encounter, and it's just very immersive and visually appealing. It's a great way to show the player what's going on. Battle-wise, the game's like a standard RPG. You and your party take turns attacking, damage is dealt, same old same old. What makes this game unique is that you can actually recruit your enemies. Recruiting demons is a staple of the series, in that you can request for an enemy demon to become your ally. Whether it's through negotiation or through battle, it varies from game to game. The game is also set in modern times, though back then it was the early 90s. The reason for this is that Kazuma Kaneko, the main dude behind the series, noticed that most other games back then, in fact almost all of them, were based in medieval times like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, and at the time those were the main competitors against what would be the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. He also really didn't care for how in those games the main character was always someone predestined, someone special, like a warrior of light or hero of darkness. He didn't like the idea that to be important, to do something that matters, you had to be born someone special. That's why in most of the SMT games, you just start off as a normal person. But in a lot of the Shin Megami Tensei games, you get something called a com, which is basically kind of a computer gauntlet that's used to handle various tasks throughout the game, such as mini-mapping and displaying loadouts. Additionally, in most games, and at least in the Megami Tensei games, the cup usually comes with a demon summoning program, which appears in, like I said, most of the games, and that's what leads us to probably the most important part of the series, which would be the demons. In Shin Megami Tensei, the designs of the demons vary. Kazuma Kaneko designed most of them, but their designs range from majestic to mundane. You have some absolutely gorgeous designs like Metatron and Thanatos, and then you have ones like Slime. Either way, every demon is uniquely designed with an homage to whatever mythos they originate from, whether the mythology be Judeo-Christian, Hindu, or Japanese. There are some exceptions to this, however. A few demons do share the same palettes and designs. Also, Mara is in a lot of these games, and yes, that's exactly what it looks like. Anyways, back to the actual games themselves. So, like I said earlier, the first 2 Shin Megami Tensei games are what really got the series going. Keep in mind that these games are the core Shin Megami Tensei games. The core games didn't really get a sequel until Nocturne came out, but we'll get into that later. Anyways, you can recruit demons to your side, but you can also fuse them together. Demon fusing is also in most Megaten games, whether it's a proprietary of the Velvet Room or a program on the comp. You take 2 demons, or in other games sometimes 3 or even 6, and you fuse them together to make a stronger, more powerful demon. The result usually varies on the race of the demons and the levels. And yes, the demons are also split up into classes. A few of those would be races like Divine, Vile, Tyrant, Fairy. There's a whole more that I'm not really going to bother listing here because this synopsis is long enough as it is. Another important thing to consider in Mega 10 games are the alignments. Most games have an alignment system of law, neutral, and chaos, with law usually being characters like Metatron and the Angels, where chaos is commonly led by Lucifer and other demons under his command. Neutral is usually the result when the player neither chooses law or chaos, and they instead choose to trust in humanity rather than supernatural forces. Because of this, a lot of games have multiple endings. Some endings don't even have to do with the alignment system, but a lot of them have an ending for law, they have an ending for chaos, and they have an ending for neutral. Some games, such as Shin Megami Tensei 9, which I will briefly discuss later, has 9 alignment systems. You probably would know this from Dungeons & Dragons if you ever played that, where you have neutral good, lawful evil, chaotic good, all that stuff. Nine alignments. Battles go about how you expect in an RPG. You make a move, your demons make a move, and the enemy makes a move, usually dependent on the speed or the agility of the entities in combat. Magic skills are in these games though. In some games, the protagonist is incapable of casting magics, but demons are almost always able to. You have your basic elemental magics like Bufu, Agi, Zio, and Garu or Zan, which equate to ice, fire, electricity, and wind. And then you have other elemental spells like Hama and Muda, which would be light and dark or expel and death. Some games actually have a 5th elemental spell, Terra, which would be earth. In addition to this, you have healing and revival skills like Dia and Rekarm, and you have skills that buff and debuff like Suhu Kaja and Dekunda. These skills usually alter the stats of physical or magical attack, defense, evasion, and accuracy. There's also specific skills that only a few demons learn, like Daisojo's Meditation in Nocturne and Hellel's Morning Star in Persona 3 and 4. But yeah, other than that, that's the basic gist of a Shin Megami Tensei battle. After the first 2 Shin Megami Tensei games were released, we got the 4 Last Bible games. The first 2 were released for the Game Boy Color, and the third one was released for the Super Famicom. All of the Last Bible series actually take place in a sort of fantasy world, a little like the Middle East of olden days. This is one of the few Mega 10 series that doesn't take place in a modern or futuristic settings. The games have the basic RPG elements, such as a turn-based battle system, and allows for the recruitment of monsters, which is what this series refers to demons as, since the Last Bible series was more intended for younger players. After that, we had Shin Megami Tensei If. If was more of a spin-off of the main Shin Megami Tensei game, and it served as a kind of prototype to the original Persona series. The game has 4 central storylines and paths, which aren't really influenced by the alignment system. If was never released outside of Japan, but there's currently an English fan translation in the works, which as of now is around 80% done. This is one of the first Mega 10 games that involves high schoolers as protagonists, and the characters in this game are referenced often in the first Persona game. In the same year as If, Majin Tensei, which literally means Demon God Reincarnation, came out. It plays the same as Shin Megami Tensei, but it has a bit of turn-based strategy in it. It had 3 sequels, Majin Tensei 2, Spiral Nemesis, Majin Tensei Rond, and Majin Tensei Blind Thinker. In between these games was Kyoyaku Megami Tensei, which was a Super Famicom bundled port of the first 2 Megami Tensei games, as well as SMT Devil Summoner. Devil Summoner was released for the Sega Saturn in 1995, and takes place in modern Japan. I can't say too much about this one because it was never released in North America and it never got a translation patch, but it did lay the way for other Devil Summoner games. And here we have the very first Shin Megami Tensei game to be released to America. Jack Bros for the Virtual Boy. Really swell start. Anyways, the game is about Jack Frost, who's basically the Shin Megami Tensei mascot, little snowman, goes around calling people a hoe, and Pyro Jack. And they're basically just dicking around the entire game. And, like, the funniest thing about this game is the box art. Look at it. You know how American box art usually has to make it look extreme and hardcore? This is a prime example. Also, the game has literally no bearing on the series at all. And after that, we have Megami Ruku Persona. This was the very first Persona game. Now, if you've played a Persona game, it probably wasn't this one. The one everybody knows is Persona 4 and then maybe 3, but this is the most least known game of the series. But this is also where I started picking up speed in America. Basically, you're a kid in high school, weird shit starts going down, you and your friends meet this guy called Philemon, who's the proprietor of a place called the Velvet Room, which basically exists out of normal space and time. The Velvet Room is in every Persona game, but in 3 and 4 it's basically just Igor. Anyways, your team gets personas, which is kind of a staple of the series, and a persona is basically a manifestation of someone's personality. And I'm pretty sure someone has the penis chariot as their persona. I'm not sure. The game was ported to America, but they changed a lot of stuff. They took out any references to Japanese culture, they changed yen to dollars, and they changed the skin color and hair of the protagonist, and just a lot of other stuff. But Atlus changed it all back though when they released it for the PSP later. A little after this, Shin Megami Tensei Tokyo Moku Shiroku was published. That game takes place in between Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2. Specifically, this is a little bit spoilery, but Shin Megami Tensei 1 is an old game. But it takes place a little after Tokyo got obliterated by nukes. Persona 2 came next. Persona 2 was actually split into 2 different games, Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Innocent Sin focuses on Tatsuya Suyo as the protagonist, while Eternal Punishment focuses on Maya Amano as the main character. Both parts, while part of the same story, have been remade for the PSP recently, but only the first one has been localized in America. As of now, there's literally no news on whether or not North America or Europe will ever get Eternal Punishment localized. Then we have the Devil Children games. These games were basically the Shin Megami Tensei equivalent of Pokemon. Devil Children Red Book and Black Book were released at the same time for the Game Boy Color, though the 2 versions are different. A little while after, Devil Children White Book was released, and they were all bundled together for the PlayStation. The game is much lighter in tone and design than any other SMT game. Shin Megami Tensei 9 was a weird one, because this game was released for the Xbox. This game did not take off at all, because the Xbox is really unpopular in Japan. It was actually supposed to lead into an MMORPG, but that obviously didn't work out. The story of this game is kind of like Shin Megami Tensei, because it takes place between Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, as humanity tries to rebuild society, and they build a virtual reality thing and they fight glitches called noise. So, I'm guessing Atlus really didn't have enough of the Devil Children games, so they made Demi-Kids. Demi-Kids Light and Dark versions were the second generation of the Devil Children games, kind of like how Silver and Gold were the second generation of the Pokemon games. The gameplay is generally the same as Devil Children, but in first person, like the original SMT games. About a year later, Devil Children Fire and Ice versions were released. I'm guessing they sold pretty well because they made so goddamn many of them. Another game in this series called Messiah Riser was released, as well as a puzzle game. In between all those, we have Shin Megami Tensei 3, Nocturne. Nocturne is probably one of the most amazing games in the series, in my opinion, but I'm not going to go too in-depth on it now, because I plan on doing a review for it later. This game introduced a lot of new demons, and continued the core story of the first 2 SMT games. It also implemented a press turn system. You'd start with the amount of turns for how many demons you have, and if you scored a critical hit or exploited a weakness, you get another half press turn. You can also skip a turn and only use half of a press turn. The game was also re-released as Maniacs Edition, with like 5 new dungeons, a bunch of new bosses, a new ending, a new final boss, and cameos by Dante from Devil May Cry and Raido Kuzunoha of the Devil Summoner series, but we'll get to those games later. The year after came another more mature Shin Megami Tensei game, which would be Digital Devil Saga Avatar Tuner. This game's a bit different, as your character actually is a demon. You don't recruit demons or anything, so there's no fusing, but you level up and you learn skills by spending Maka, which is currency in pretty much every Shin Megami Tensei game, to unlock skill trees. And you eat people, so that's pretty damn cool. And the characters in the game are great, especially Gale and Heat, and it's got voice acting. Digital Devil Saga got a sequel the next year, and then comes what's probably one of the biggest titles in the entire franchise, Persona 3. This is the game that basically sold Shin Megami Tensei in America for people. You're the protagonist, weird shit happens at midnight, I'm not really going to get into the plot. Personas in this game are essentially demons. You fuse them, you find them as cards in dungeons, but they're not really demons, you don't talk to them. Anyways, you have things called social links. You go talk to your friends throughout the game, they have their own little storylines and backstories, and eventually, by talking to them enough and doing what they want, you will max out your social links, which will let you fuse stronger personas. The higher social link you have, the more bonus EXP your personas get when you fuse them in the Velvet Room. Igor didn't go away, but pretty much everyone else related to the Velvet Room did. Persona 3 also has a one more system, where if you exploit an enemy's weakness or score a critical hit, the enemy's knocked down and you can do an all-out attack, or you can just have another turn. You can't directly control your party members, but you can give them guidelines on what to do. You can't actually control them though. The game's often written off as a dating simulator because of the option to date some of the characters, but it's more of a dungeon crawler. Also, this game is really sad and I cried like a bitch when I beat it. Alright, it's 2006 now, and we have Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoha versus the Soulless Army. Look at this dude. That's Raido Kuzunoha. This game takes place kind of in the 30s of Japan, but things are a little weird with the time. That's story related though. You summon demons from tubes, you confuse them, and the way you recruit demons is exploiting their weaknesses and stuffing them into your goddamn tubes. The way the game plays is way different from other Shin Megami Tensei games though. When you go into a battle, you can run around, you can shoot your enemies with your gun or hit them with your sword, while you can have one of your demon friends out and about wrecking shit. You can give the commands through a menu you can bring up like, use physical attacks, conserve magic points, or heal me, I'm fucking dying. Also, this game has a fucking awesome dude with a beard, who I'm not going to say who it is because that would be spoilers, but beards are awesome, play this game. It's also really hard to find in America, so you'd be way better off ordering it through eBay or just emulating it if your computer can handle it. It was followed up with Raido Kuzunoha vs King Abaddon, which plays the same way, but the combat is vastly improved, with the addition of being allowed to summon 2 demons at a time in battle. Also, you get a talking kitty cat. I cried at the end of this game too. In between those, the MMORPG Shin Megami Tensei Imagine got launched. It's your basic MMO, but confusing. You recruit demons like in other Shin Megami Tensei games by talking to them, but you die really easy, and it takes literally forever to level up. I spent a really long time in this game trying to get a high enough level to fuse a Satanta before I basically stopped playing it forever. But if you like MMORPGs, it's worth trying, and it's free. Persona 4 came out around this time, and this is the most well-known Shin Megami Tensei title. It's a great game. It didn't really add much. It's not that different from Persona 3 other than the story and characters, and the gameplay is mostly the same. The one more system is still there. You still fuse your personas the same way. Everything is the same except for you directly control your party members, but other than that, it's about the same as Persona 3. But my favorite part of the game is when you solve the mystery with your friends, which maxes out the Judgment social link and allows you to fuse Lucifer, Prince of Darkness. And around now, we kind of take a turnaround from Persona, being the generic teenager save the world deal, and we turn to Strange Journey for the DS. Now, if you've got one of those friends that are all, "Ew, anything from Japan is for weeaboos," show them this game. Seriously. Look at the character design. Does that look anything remotely weeaboo to you? Anyways, the game's ridiculously hard, maybe even harder than Nocturne, which is widely regarded as the hardest SMT game. It's got a basic turn-based system, though it heavily uses the alignment system. If you have demons with the same alignment as you on your party, and you exploit the enemy's weakness, your demons will do a follow-up attack. The game is very much like the first Shin Megami Tensei games, as it retains the first-person perspective, and it's probably one of the most immersive Shin Megami Tensei games I've ever played. In this game, my favorite character died before the first boss. Devil Survivor also came out for the DS in the same year, and this game's a little strange. It's a turn-based strategy RPG, kind of like how the first 2 Personas played. However, you dispatch teams of 1 character and up to 2 demons to fight. You can have up to 4 teams at once. Battles last for 1 turn. Each entity gets 1 turn to attack, and then the skirmish ends. If you exploit a weakness or get a critical hit, you get an extra turn only for that demon or only for that character. You can also directly set the skills of your characters through skill cracks, which let you basically steal the skills of enemies you defeat, provided you plan ahead. It got re-released as Devil Survivor Overclocked for the 3DS, which added more demons and an 8th day. No real 3D functions other than the opening cinematic. Devil Survivor 2 came out in 2011, and had the same basic gameplay as Devil Survivor 1. There's more demons, more skills, some things are improved on, but the gameplay is mainly the same. Catherine isn't even a Shin Megami Tensei game, but for some reason, everybody thinks it is. Get out of here! Persona 4 Arena came out this past year, 2012, and it's a fighting game co-developed by Atlus and Arc System Works. It's a fighting game, it's a spin-off of Persona. It's a spin-off of a spin-off, which is probably why it doesn't have the Shin Megami Tensei title. But it's Persona, so I mean, yeah, it's a Shin Megami Tensei game loosely. Anyways, Persona 4 Arena is the last Shin Megami Tensei game to be published as of now. Persona 5 is in development, but we literally don't know anything about it other than it's being made. However, Shin Megami Tensei 4 is being developed right now for the 3DS, and it's going to be released in Japan this year. and we're getting little bits of information every now and then. We know it's got a turn-based system, we know time travel might be involved, and it has afros, which is fucking awesome. That about loosely covers everything in the Shin Megami Tensei series, but if you think I've left anything out that should have been included, or if I made any mistakes, please send me a message. I'll try to correct things. I might do a correction video if I got enough things wrong, but if you see something you wanted me to do, or if you saw something that was wrong, just let me know. Thank you for watching.